Hello and welcome. Tonight, police dispersed protesters with tear gas at the Beggar roundabout area in the nation's capital. Pro and anti-protesters clash at the Ganifa Park, Ojota, Lagos mainland. And the Chief of Defense Staff warns looters against taking disadvantage of the nationwide protest. General Christopher Musa says the armed forces will take action and won't allow destruction to fester. On business news tonight, money supply in the country reaches all-time high, climbs above 100 trillion naira in the month of June, according to latest report from the central bank.
And in international news from London, 3 Americans who were freed in a prisoner swap deal with Russia, including the Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, have arrived back on US soil.
The second day of our coverage of the nationwide protest convened by youth demanding the government addresses issues of hunger, high cost of food, unemployment, a cut of high electricity tariff, petrol pump and food prices, as well as other issues bordering on economic hardship. Operatives of the Nigeria police fired tear gas canisters at the group of protesters assembled around the Beggar Bridge in Abuja. A simmering tension between pro and anti-protesters on one hand and pro-protesters and police on the other hand has virtually doused as demonstrators return to the Ganifa Freedom Park right here in Lagos. While protesters in Port Harcourt, the River State capital, demonstrated under carnival-like atmosphere, police authorities arrested 392 suspected looters of NCC Park at Kano High Court and other locations during Thursday's End Bad Governance protest. For Sokoto State, the police command arrested 81 suspected hoodlums in connection to the violence and vandalism that followed the nationwide protest against hunger across the state. The chairman of Kefi local government area of Nasarawa State imposed a curfew in the area, citing security reasons emanating from the protest. For members of the Jaw community in Abuja, they asked organizers of the protest to sheath their swords. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, warns that the armed forces will take action and they will not allow looting and destruction to continue. Meanwhile, police has dispersed protesters with tear gas at the Beggar roundabout, as we told you earlier, in the nation's capital, Abuja, on the second day of the nationwide End Hardship and Bad Governance protest. Meanwhile, at Moshood Abiola Stadium, where other protesters gathered to continue with the protest, there was heavy security presence.
It's day 2 of the End Hardship and Bad Governance protest, and these protesters in Abuja are gathered at the Beggar roundabout, chanting songs and displaying placards with various inscriptions. Despite a court order restricting them to the Moshood Abiola Stadium, some of them feel they are better off here.
We cannot tell people to go to the stadium to go and protest. The people, we are not footballers. No. You understand? Even the footballers that use the stadium, they have money to chill. They pay them well. We are the ones that suffer. Yes. You understand? So we are not animals, and Nigeria is our country. You understand? Nigeria is our country.
Others highlight the demands and reasons behind the demonstrations.
We need to put an end to this bad government. It is our responsibility to fight, and if we don't fight, nobody is going to fight for us.
We have so many issues of insecurities cut across north, south and east. Even here in Abuja it's not safe. Issues of kidnappers, banditry and so many other things. So we want the president to listen to us.
Even if they want to kill us.
However, before they could settle into the day's plan, a combined team of police and the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps arrived and fired several canisters of tear gas to disperse the protesters. A small crowd of the protesters regrouped at the Moshood Abiola Stadium. And just like the first day, there is heavy deployment of security personnel. After a while, the protesters file out of the stadium, headed towards the central business district and the Eagle Square. Again, they are met with stiff resistance from the police, who fire tear gas to disperse them. The second day of the protest in Abuja has suffered the same fate as the first day. Security agents appear uninterested in seeing any protester beyond the environs of the stadium.
Well, there was relative calm in parts of the northern area of Nigeria on day 2 of the nationwide End Bad Governance protest after some governors addressed the protesters in their state in a bid to quell the tension following the scale of violence witnessed on day 1. However, in some states, there were peaceful processions. The protesters appealed to the government to address their plights.
It's day 2 of the End Bad Governance protest. And following the fracas that trailed the first day of the protest, security is beefed up across the states in the north to forestall another breakdown of law and order. Some state governors also addressed protesters in the states in a bid to reduce the tension.
This is not an NLC demand for increment of salary. They are protesting for hunger. They are protesting against poverty, which is as a result of the bad policy by this administration.
There is problem, there is hunger.
Yes, sir. Of course, sir. That's the fact. That's the fact we are here.
It is my responsibility.
Yes, sir.
As your brother.
Yes, sir.
As your governor.
Yes, sir.
To make sure that the best will come back to you.
Thank you, sir.
However, in Plateau State, the former Minister of Sports, Solomon Dalong, urged President Bola Tinubu to consider the demands put forward by the protesters.
The main purpose of this protest is to praise the president to reverse some of his economic policies that has brought so much intolerance to the people. And I appeal to the people of Plateau to conduct themselves peacefully, because our own challenges are so peculiar. And I thank them for demonstrating love, because yesterday, when it was time to pray, the Muslims were given water here, they perform ablution, and they say their prayers to God while we give them protection.
Meanwhile, the chairman of Kefi local government area of Nasarawa State has imposed a curfew in the community, citing security concerns arising from the hijack of the protest by miscreants on day 1. Calm returns to Gombe as the governor goes round town to inspect the situation.
Yes, there is a setback because for 2 days people have not gone to business. But for sure, Gombe is always ready to cooperate with us as a government and will pursue and support whatever in order to see that these people go back to their businesses and nobody comes and cause any mayhem to them. There is going to be peace, a continuous peace for them to pursue their businesses. There is going to be peace for government to run its business, and people will move forward the way we used to do, inshallah.
His Kwara State counterpart appreciates the people for heeding the call not to protest.
We engage properly all the stakeholders, religious bodies, and they understood and they're patient. But I can assure them that the president is working, and very soon you start seeing changes. There are things like the students' loans, all sorts of various interventions are going on to deepen the relief. So I just urge patience, and peace will be done. Those that are angry, yes, we feel your anger, but the most important thing is to say, this is a listening government, we've heard, and the right things will be done.
In the meantime, the police in Sokoto State says 81 suspected hoodlums have been arrested in connection with the violence and vandalism that followed the nationwide protest against hunger in the state.
And staying in the northern part of Nigeria, the Kano State Police Command has arrested 326 suspected looters of the NCC Industrial Park and other locations during the first day of the End Bad Governance protest in the state. The police public relations officer, Mr. Abdullahi Haruna, disclosed this during a press briefing at the command's headquarters in Kano. Meanwhile, emirs Mohammed Sanusi and Aminu Adobayero have also appealed for calm in the state. Our correspondent Sadiq Ilyasu reports.
The End Bad Governance protest in Kano has left behind scenes of looted and burnt properties. This is the Kano printing press established during the colonial era. Machines worth billions were burnt and many items stolen.
Yesterday morning, we invited civil defense, which came to give us cover. I think about 20 of them. But when the attacks come in thousands, they overpower the civil defense securities personnel.
However, the police succeeded in arresting 326 suspects and recovered many stolen items.
A total of 326 suspects were arrested with large quantity of exhibits recovered from them, which you will all see them. This exhibit also includes what you are seeing here today, 2 AK-47 rifles that were looted from the Audubako Secretariat High Court complexes.
Meanwhile, the 15th and 16th emirs of Kano joined the calls for calm.
The property that was burnt or stolen belongs to the people of Kano. We have set ourselves back. The printing press that was burnt would have to be rebuilt. The machines would have to be bought. And these are funds that could have gone into youth empowerment, into poverty alleviation, into education, healthcare, and nutrition, and addressing the very problems that we are protesting against.
We are urging you to remain calm. All your complaints have been heard and will be transmitted to the President by the grace of God.
Though the situation remains tense, authorities are working to restore order in the ancient city. Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, the Chief of Defense Staff warns looters taking advantage of the nationwide protest. General Christopher Musa says the armed forces will take action and will not allow destruction to fester. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television from Lagos. A reminder of our main stories. Police dispersed protesters with tear gas at the Beggar roundabout area in the nation's capital, Abuja. Pro and anti-protesters clash at the Gani Fawemi Park in Ojota, Lagos mainland. The Chief of Defense Staff warns looters taking advantage of the nationwide protest. General Christopher Musa says the armed forces will take action and won't allow destruction to fester. Let's come back here in Lagos, where there was a clash, where the State High Court granted an order restricting the protest to the Gani Fawemi Freedom Park in Ojota and the Peace Park in K2 area of Lagos. Our correspondent Kelly Agiga was at the area and now reports.
It's day 2 of the nationwide protest, and we continue our special coverage, making a quick stop at Bega, a boundary town between Ogun and Lagos states. Compared to day 1, movements and business activities are beginning to slowly resume, but not at 100%. At the Gani Fawemi Freedom Park in Ojota, pockets of protesters assemble here early under the watchful eyes of the police, NSCDC, LNSC, and even the military, all deployed here. As minutes pour into hours, hundreds of mostly young and placard-carrying protesters joined the movement demonstrating against bad governance and the cost of living crisis. And as the demonstrations gather momentum, vehicular movement is stalled, a development that leads to a clash between anti-government and pro-government protesters, with one of the protesters smashing a microphone. Efforts by organizers to move the protest into the park, away from the service lane here in Ketu, meets a wall of resistance. The Lagos State Commissioner of Police arrives at the protest ground with a message of assurance.
So far it's been very peaceful. It is very peaceful. All that we need is to manage this Ketu Ojota, this Gani Park and the Peace Park, to make sure that protesters have their day, do what they want to do peacefully, and we disperse when it is time to disperse.
Inibege Efyong is one of the lawyers to the protesters. He engages the CP over alleged arrest by the command on day one.
For the past 2 days, members of our group have had some form of communication with the Commissioner of Police regarding what we have observed, one of which is the incessant arrest of protesters in Lagos State. In fact, I can confirm to you that between Sunday and today, several persons have been picked up in different parts of Lagos, and we have had to engage the State Police Command to secure their release.
With the presence of security agencies here, led by the Commissioner of Police, the protesters chant songs marching from one end of the road and back, listing their demands, including the reinstatement of gas and electricity subsidies, whose removal as part of the government's audacious reforms to grow the economy has had a knock-on effect on the prices of just about everything else.
Protesters and demonstrators have been making their grievances and demands really clear through solidarity songs, as you can hear behind me, for quite some time now, for over 5 hours right here in this particular area of Lagos. They say there is the determination to keep protesting until their demands and grievances are met by government at all levels. From the Gani Faramihimi Park here in Lagos, Kelly Egiga, Channels Television News.
And just as protests entered a second day in some parts of Nigeria, commercial districts right here in Lagos, from Lekki Toll Plaza, where protesters have hardly convened through many parts of Victoria Island and Lagos Island, traders and business operators lament the negative impact of the protest on their businesses. Our correspondent Olu Phillips tells us more.
On a regular day, we will be competing for space with human and vehicular traffic around this axis, the Lagos Island. When this DNA Center and Forensic Lab was built by the previous administration and commissioned barely 6 months or thereabout after its commissioning, coming under the heavy stamping of protesters that became rioters, this center was set ablaze and brought to its knees as it's standing. 4 years or nearly so, we visited here to know if protesters may gather around here, and surprisingly also found that one of the ruins are still lying
bare bones and prostrate?
Actually, I have more to say than to beg the government just to find something to do about, because if anything happens in this Lagos time, because I believe most, let me say all the current states, they're expecting this Lagos Island to bring to start the point. Once they start in this Lagos Island, sorry to say, sir, everything will spoil, something will destroy.
It is business unusual, essentially derived from activities of protesters who have called for a convocation, an action that have impacted Lagos in no little measure commercially. Locked gates, barred entrances, all indicate the impact of the demonstrations holding at venues beyond here.
Government should please, as you are coming down, it's not as if we are fools as you are coming down. They should please cease to sins. They should just please hearken to people's word, because a lot of people are dying inside. A lot of family cannot eat 3 square meal, not even 2 square meal, even to talk of a day meal. They cannot afford it. There is no price control, no more price control. Everybody wants money, everybody wants to blow. So that one also added to it.
Following the red alert issued by the Inspector General of Police after wanton destruction of properties witnessed in some parts of the country, security operatives are moved into positions strategic enough to provide both cover and push back any uproar. Awolowo Road in Ikoyi, Paloma Roundabout, through the Ikoyi Link Bridge and towards the Lekki Toll Plaza, the area is calm and quiet. Protesters don't seem to have this place in focus, or may have simply complied to the restriction order of where to converge.
I think the government needs to do more, in all reality. I think the president needs to come out to address the people, to tell us the plans. You know, people are definitely aggrieved. Things are not going right. Food is too expensive. The power is too high. Well, everything is like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So I believe he needs to come out to tell us, okay, this is the situation. Give us this time so that we can work things out, or reverse some policies.
How many passengers don't enter this Aja motor?
My brother, this morning no passenger. Everywhere is dry. See, as you can see, the whole bus here, no one is loading. There is no passenger. There is no passenger.
Every day is a new day, and adds to the number of days staged by the protesters. Will they wane, or will they present a stronger formation in pursuing their agenda? The devil is in the details. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
We head to Rivers State now, where the Commissioner of Police, Olatunji Disu, has assured protesters of his officer's maximum professionalism in handling the protest. Mr. Disu made this known in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, while interacting with protesters at the Federal Secretariat on Aba Road on day 2 of the protest.
It's day 2 of the #EndBadGovernance protest in Port Harcourt, and as early as 8 a.m., protesters begin to assemble opposite the Port Harcourt Pleasure Park amidst heavy security presence. Slowly, they collect, and another group joins them from the direction of the artillery area of the town, and the now larger group march down to the Federal Secretariat, where they camp out amidst music from a DJ set. They initially blocked the road, but the Commissioner of Police arrives, and during his address to the protesters, he thanks them for their peaceful conduct. He also requests they open up the road to commuters.
I'm here to meet with you here and to let you know that so far so good. I'm saying thank you. Thank you. If you think we are going to come here and have confrontation with you, you have failed. If you think that is what is in your mind, then it will not happen. But at the same time, I want us to know that we don't want you to block the road. We will stay here with you Anywhere you want to go, we will go with you. So far, so good. I thank you so much. May Almighty God continue to be our guide.
They obliged the CP, but continue their protest on one side of the road. Some of them continue to reiterate their demands for an end to bad governance.
The president can end this protest today. Just a word from the president. He made a statement on inauguration. They said subsidy is gone. That same word changed Nigeria pattern up to today. The same word, he can repeat it, reverse it and say subsidy is back, and you see that everything will end. You know, the price of fuel is the one that determines everything that happens in Nigeria. Change the price of fuel and you see that even food stuff, the price will go down. We want the fuel price to come down. Even if it's not up to what we expect, but at least it should come down. Secondly is that he should copy or learn from Donald Trump, President Donald Trump of America. Whatever policy that man is making, he always says America first. So whatever policy, any policy they want to make, they should put Nigeria first and make Nigeria great again.
There is some interesting interaction between the Commissioner of Police and the protesters yet again, during which he provides them with water and promises to keep his men with them. The protesters even clean up the trash after themselves.
Not to cause any problem. We just want to
send the team here. Please, the team must come and stay here.
Yes, let us stay here. Come to occupy this place and we're not causing any problem. It's a peaceful one, very peaceful.
It's day 2 of the End Bad Governance protest here in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, and so far so good. The protesters have had a very wonderful level of interaction with the security agencies. It's been calm and cordial, and they have been very peaceful. So peaceful that the Commissioner of Police has thanked them for the level of cooperation they have given to him and his men. The prayer and the hope is that they will continue to maintain this level of decorum as the protest intensifies. From the front of the Federal Secretariat, Port Harcourt, Rivers State, Charles Operum, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, money supply in the country reaches all-time high, climbs above 100 trillion naira in the month of June, according to latest report from the Central Bank. And that's on Business News. Please join us again. Welcome back. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, is appealing to Nigerians to be patient with the government, saying that the government cannot solve Nigeria's problems in 1 year. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, General Musa says the military will not watch and allow the kind of destruction that happened last year to repeat itself, as the military is prepared to take action to maintain peace. The Chief of Defense Staff adds that the military is on standby to step into the situation to avoid the events of 2020 at the NSAS protest, identifying some of the sponsors of this year's protest.
Commitment by upholding its promise to allow people to associate freely without any rancor. Well, I'm sure everyone is disappointed with the outcome. Clearly, the security forces have done extremely very well. I'm very happy to mention what especially the Nigerian police force, have shown a lot of professionalism, including where members of the armed forces had to step in. But you can see that we have remained very professional in our conduct and will continue to do that, as long as the citizens also understand that there's a difference between peace and criminality. What we saw yesterday was, at the beginning, some semblance of a very peaceful demonstration, but which was quickly taken over by a bunch of criminals that don't mean us well. And if you remember, we have warned that there are individuals that are ready to cause mayhem once this starts. And so we want to appeal to Nigerians to understand that the federal government is doing the best it can for the country. Like I said, we are supporting the police all through, but we are just on standby. The police is doing a good job. They're handling the situation for now. And unless if it breaks beyond what they can handle, then the military will step in. And the military is on standby, and we're watching day and night.
Amnesty International has condemned the killing of 13 protesters allegedly by security personnel across Nigeria, describing the incident as unjustified and unacceptable. A statement issued by the country's director, Issa Sanusi, says the Nigerian authorities must investigate these incidents impartially and effectively and ensure that security personnel suspected or taking responsibility for the alleged deadly use of force are held to account through fair trial. The organization notes that the killings occurred in Suleja, Niger State, where 6 people were killed and dozens were severely wounded, in Maiduguri, where 4 people were killed, and Kaduna, where 3 people were killed. Amnesty International is also concerned about what it describes as Nigerian authorities' growing hostility to dissent and the relentless repression of the right of freedom of peaceful assembly. In the meantime, the senior advocate of Nigeria and lawyer to one of the conveners of the ongoing nationwide protest, Ebonlu Adegboruwa, says that though the intention of the organizers was to achieve peaceful and well-coordinated protest, it will seem, the fifth columnist, as some angry persons have infiltrated the ranks of the protesters to derail their mission. Mr. Adegboruwa, in a statement issued today, has asked President Bola Tinubu to directly address the nation and then engage the protesters through their representatives, thereafter set up a committee comprising men and women of integrity to meet with the protesters to address the issues they have raised. He also appeals to the protesters to withdraw themselves from their various protest grounds and suspend the protest immediately and indefinitely in order to give room for meaningful dialogue and engagement with the government. Well, the senior advocate of Nigeria, Olu Adegboruwa, may have appealed to Nigerians to suspend the nationwide protest, but the Take It Back movement are insisting on trudging on. Well, the director of mobilization of the group, Damilare Adiola, says the rallies will continue till President Bola Tinubu addresses their demands. He was speaking on Channels Television's August protest program just this evening.
Olu Adegboruwa is not our lawyer. And he doesn't speak for us.
But you wrote on behalf of Take It Back movement,
yes,
to the IGP.
Yes, he might have presented himself as a solicitor, but he's not hungry, obviously.
Have you sacked him?
He's a senior advocate.
Have you sacked him?
He's a senior advocate.
You might employ a lawyer and sack him.
Mr. Ebun, he's a senior advocate of Nigeria who, lives well. He's not as hungry as common people who are taking over.
So you don't yield to that plea that you should call it off today?
No.
The president has heard you loud and clear. Please sheath your swords. And that's the appeal coming from the Minister of State for Labor and Employment, Nkeruka Onyejocha, to protesters. Addressing journalists in Abuja, the minister says President Bola Tinubu is both aware and ready to address the challenges confronting the economy, including finding a lasting solution to insecurity. She appeals to the protesters to end the protest.
I am so concerned about what happened yesterday, especially the loss of lives for our brothers and sisters who passed on at the cause of the protest. My heart goes to them. It's quite unfortunate that these things has to happen that way. I plead that we should sheath our sword and embrace peace and stop at this moment. The president has heard everybody loud and clear. President is somebody who is a Nigerian, who understands the politics of this country, who understands the yearning and aspiration of the people of this country.
In the meantime, the Sultan of Sokoto and President of the Nigeria Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, Alhaji Mohammed Zaid Abubakar III, and the President of the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, Archbishop Daniel Oko, are appealing to Nigerian youth to put an end to the ongoing nationwide protest. This appeal is contained in the statements they jointly signed with the Executive Secretary of NIREC, Professor Cornelius Afebu Omohua. While acknowledging that there is hardship in the country, NIREC has noted that civil unrest is not the solution and that it will only aggravate the already frail state of the nation. It also appeals to fellow citizens of Nigeria to call off the protest and give the government a chance to redeem itself. Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima says that Africa needs reforms that will help catalyze growth and lift its people out of poverty. Senator Shettima, who was speaking at the African caucus meeting holding in Abuja, advised African leaders to focus on policies that will shape the collective agenda of the continent's economic growth and development. Our business correspondent Sarah Achinogu has this report.
This is the first time Nigeria will be hosting the African caucus, a meeting of African finance ministers and central bank governors. Top government officials, representatives of development finance institutions, and key players in the finance sector are also attending the event. The meeting is being held amidst the need to close the poverty and inequality gaps, which continue to pose a challenge to growth.
Our ambition is to consistently grow at 7.8% per annum in order to lead our people out of poverty. To achieve this target, this expectation, we must come together across the divide for shared solutions to critical challenges that impede the development and progress of our continent.
To navigate this complex landscape and set the continent on a path of sustainable economic growth, we must leverage the support of our global partners.
According to UN statistics, over a fifth of tax revenue in 25 developing countries was spent on servicing external debt, leaving around 3.3 billion people paying more on interest than on health or education. However, regional governments are considering reforms to change this situation.
The use of this technology, not only in trade, but in improving procurement and good governance generally, does require building human and legislative capacity across the continent.
An estimated $9 billion in additional trade can be unlocked through liberalizing trade on the continent, as envisaged under the African Continental Free Trade Area.
The Vice President, Kashim Shettima, declares the meeting open. He says that with the right reforms, Nigeria and Africa can come out of its challenges, even in the face of Africa needing an estimated $1.3 trillion annually to meet its sustainable development goals by 2030.
No matter how long the night is, it must give way to the light of the dawn. Stormy, the weather might well be, but it won't rain forever. We have crossed the Rubicon. The president took the painful bullet. Reforms are inevitable.
The African caucus, established in 1963, comprises finance ministers and central bank governors from across the continent. It aims to strengthen the voice of African leaders in the Bretton Woods institution on development issues which are crucial to Africa. Sarah Achinogu, Channels Television News.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Money supply in the country rose to a record high of 101.34 trillion naira in the month of June this year, and that's according to latest data coming from the central bank. That amount, which comes despite the monetary tightening of the CBN, represents a 56.15% increase when you compare it to 64.9 trillion naira level, which was recorded in the same period just last year. On a month-on-month basis, money supply increased by 2.1% from 99.2 trillion in May this year. Money supply, which is also known as M3, is used by economists to estimate the total amount of money available, which can influence inflation, interest rates, and overall economic activities. Meanwhile, the central bank says that it will reintroduce the retail Dutch auction system on Wednesday, August the 7th, which will allow to sell foreign exchange to end users through authorized dealer banks. In a circular issued today, the financial market regulator directed authorized dealer banks to provide it with a list of all outstanding demands of Forex users, which should contain information like the customer's name, address, email, account number, as well as bank verification number and other vital information on or before Tuesday, August the 6th. The CBN adopted the retail Dutch auction system, the wholesale Dutch auction system, and the interbank rate system regime between 2002 and 2015. Let's head to the stock market now, which remains open amid the ongoing nationwide protest. It ended Friday's trading session on a positive territory, so the color is green today. Let's hear the details from Ini John Mikwa.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, it's the second day of the national protest, but it seems the market is unperturbed because we see, even today, we see the market closing in the positive trend for the first time this week, even though the gains will not be enough to erase the 4 negative sessions that we've had this week. So at the close of trade today, the market gained 219 billion naira, and with that, we see the market cap at 55.497 trillion naira, and the all share gained 0.4%, but not yet back to the 98% level. And it's because, well, partly because of the fooders. We see a recovery in that counter, that's the banking counter, and so we see FBN Holding is the only one that's unmoved at the close of Friday's trade. UBA, GTCO, Accessco, and Zenith are looking good, especially Zenith with 2.86% gain on each share price. Consumer goods was also up when we look at the counters, that's the sectors right there. Consumer goods was up because of Guinness and Honeywell flour. They gained. Oil and gas is actually the star of the day, gaining 2.56%. So O&O recovered from yesterday's fall. Total is a major one today, driving that counter up. And of course, you expect banking to be up also following the movements in the food gas. So for the very first time this week, and in spite of the protest, the bull shows its face.
Vice President Kamala Harris has clinched the Democratic Party nomination ticket for the November presidential election after securing the support of 2,350 delegates. Ms. Harris is the first black woman and first South Asian woman to become the White House standard bearer for a major U.S. political party. Here's Simon Pusey with other international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. 3 Americans who were freed in a prisoner swap deal with Russia, including the Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, have arrived back on US soil. Mr. Gershkovich was one of 16 prisoners swapped for 8 Russian prisoners in what has been described as the biggest exchange since the end of the Cold War between Russia and the West. The exchange at an airfield in Turkey also included the release of former US Marine Paul Whelan and the Russian-American journalist Alsu Komasheva. After touching down at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, Mr. Gershkovich, Ms. Komasheva and Mr. Whelan emerged from the jet to cheers from those on the tarmac. All 3 were greeted by the US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris before they embraced their families.
I meant what I said. Alliances make a difference. They stepped up. They took a chance for us. It mattered a lot. So the light is their home.
Meanwhile, 8 Russian prisoners arrived back in Moscow after the historic exchange between Russia and the West. Russian President Vladimir Putin greeted each person as they stepped off the plane. The deal appears to have hinged on Moscow's demand for the return of Vadim Krasikov, who was serving a life sentence in Germany for carrying out an assassination in a Berlin park. A Russian couple convicted of spying in Slovenia also returned to Moscow with their 2 children.
It's also important to point out the moral asymmetry in the type of prisoners that have been released. On the Russian side, it's cyber hackers, sleeper agents, and in one case, a prisoner who was convicted of murder in Germany and was serving a life sentence. On the side of prisoners being released from Russia, it's primarily journalists, human rights activists, and anti-war protesters. So the moral quality of the types of groups that are being released is quite different in both cases.
The U.S. Secretary of State has said there was overwhelming evidence Venezuela's opposition won the recent presidential election. In a statement, Antony Blinken said it was clear Edmundo Gonzalez had won the most votes, despite incumbent President Nicolas Maduro declaring a disputed victory. In a post, he said electoral data overwhelmingly demonstrates the will of the Venezuelan people. Democratic opposition candidate won the most votes in Sunday's election. Venezuelans have voted and their votes must count. His intervention comes as the presidents of Brazil, Mexico and Colombia all called on Venezuela to release the full details of last Sunday's election. The burial ceremony for the Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in Iran, has taken place in Qatar. Funeral prayers for Haniyeh took place at the Imam Mohammed bin Abdul Wahab Mosque, the largest in Qatar, before he was buried at a cemetery in Lusail, a city north of Doha. Hamas said that Arab and Islamic leaders and those involved with other Palestinian factions attended, as well as members of the public. Haniyeh was killed during a visit to Iran's capital. Iran and its allies have blamed Israel, although Israel has not claimed responsibility for his death. Thousands of people, from students to rickshaw drivers, have protested in the Bangladeshi capital of Dhaka, vandalizing armoured police vehicles and chanting anti-government slogans. Bangladesh has been going through turmoil in recent weeks as a government job quota reform movement turned fatal, claiming over 150 lives. The unrest is the biggest test facing Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina since she won a fourth term in January elections boycotted by the main opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party. And amphibious vehicles have cruised along Amsterdam's canals in a closing event of a 5-day tour of several Dutch cities. The owners of these unique cars, flying flags from all over Europe, sailed in Amsterdam waters for the last time, as from 2025 they will no longer be allowed into the city due to new environmental regulations. Every year, enthusiasts from several European countries gather to ride together for a week. This year it was the Netherlands' turn to organise, and the possibility of driving one last time in Amsterdam's famous canals attracted around 100 car owners. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
And the main news again. Police dispersed protesters with tear gas at the Beggar roundabout area in the nation's capital, Abuja. Pro and anti-protesters clash at the Gani Fawani Park in Ojota area of Lagos. And the Chief of Defense Staff warns looters taking advantage of the nationwide protest. General Christopher Musa says the armed forces will take action and won't allow destruction to fester. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Mwawadu. Have a wonderful weekend. Good night.